What's up, everybody? How are you? Welcome to an extremely rare episode of The Sweat. It is our DraftKings NBA mock draft special. Let's go. Let's get after it. We're just ripping through the lottery picks here. So the top 14 selections. Let me tell you what, the mood is tense. I have been on some... What was that? Did you hear that? Why is the
It was
ground,
a rumbling noise, but I'm
sh-
sure that as professionals we can work through it, and I don't think anybody watching heard. So.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, the floor is shaking in this building. Hope that everything's okay. I have been on some serious reports before, but nothing quite like this. Our teams, also known as our analysts, consist of DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow, who you've already seen. He's panicking. DK Nation's COLLIN Sherwin.
Okay.
And RotoWire's Nick Whalen will be joining us virtually. Pound them up on the screen. Let's go. So good morning to you three, and Godspeed. For some reason, we're letting Julian go first here, selecting first overall, despite you being on vacation for 2 months and sucking down dead sea creatures on the Raw Bar in Rhode Island. You will be representing Orlando, O-Town, home of College Emerson. The Magic are on the clock. The Magic are now officially off the clock. Who are you taking number one overall, Jules? There are about 3 players in the mix here.
Yeah, I mean, we're using our opinions here, obviously, in this mock draft, but we will try to fill you in as much as possible in terms of the betting analysis. I'm going with Jabari Smith here, who is, the odds-on favorite. I think DK Sportsbook still has him around minus 250 at the moment to be the selection. But we've seen Jabari Smith a month ago, be around even odds, minus 120, minus 140. And then because the consensus around the league was that he was going 1, he got as high as minus 500. Now we have this Banchero news, or not even news, but just the fact that he could be this pick, kind of lowering the odds from 20 to 1 to about 2 to 1. So this is not a sure thing. But when it comes down to it, I think that Smith is the better prospect. I think Orlando has a better chance to go with Smith here. Probably a little more well-rounded than Banchero. Chet Holmgren, the other top 3 prospect, maybe some medical red flags. He's a little bit more of a project. I just think Smith is the best overall prospect. And if the Magic are smart, which maybe they aren't, I think they would go with Jabari Smith. But the door is still open here. I think he's the favorite for a reason, although maybe the odds should be a little bit tighter than they are. But Smith can do it all. He's a good jump shooter. He's got great size. He can defend. I think he's the safest prospect in this draft.
Defensive versatility there, I guess, is semi-important in today's NBA as well. Number 2 overall, Oklahoma City. Colin, who do you want?
Much like College Emerson, the Orlando Magic, as everything happens in Orlando, just made a huge mistake because they passed on the best player in the draft.
Wow.
With the number 2 pick in the 2022 NBA draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Paolo Banchero, power forward, Duke University. This kid is by far the highest ceiling prospect, and I just want everyone to go back and do one thing. On YouTube, there's a highlight film of Banchero right here in Las Vegas at this little arena right over here when they played Gonzaga in November. That was before Duke took all the life out of Banchero with motion offense, with 3 out, 2 in, with him being so electric. They just sort of wore him down as the season went on. But early in that year, he was by far the best player on the floor in the game. He's only going to get better with NBA coaching that's going to build around his skill set. This kid is off the charts. He can do everything. 6'10", jump out of the gym, shoot the 3. He'll get better defensively. Look, it's going to happen. Take the kid with the ceiling. This is the best player in the draft. I don't see how everybody's missing it. I actually think Orlando's going to screw up the other way. I think they're going to surprise everybody and take Chet Holmgren. That front office is ancient over there, and I think they're going to end up actually going with the 7'4" guy because you can't teach height even in 2022. So I think they're going to go the wrong way here. But no matter what, there is no way R.C. Buford passes here.
Yeah.
Take Banchero. He's the best player in the draft. Get him.
I mean, it's hard to imagine a scenario where he's not a starter in the NBA, possibly an all-star for the next, 10 years. Let's go number 3 overall here. Houston, Whalen. You're going with, Stinky Peterson here.
Yep. Stinky Peterson. You're not going to see him in a lot of mock drafts. He's kind of an unknown guy. No, I'm going with who I think has the best long-term potential in this draft, and that's Chet Holmgren. And I don't think, I know we're kind of putting some of our personal preference in here, but I don't think OKC's passing on Chet Holmgren. If Orlando takes Jabari Smith or if they take Paolo Banchero at number 1, I don't think Holmgren gets past number 2. I think he's kind of the perfect guy to fit what OKC is building. And, you never want to draft for need. really at the top of an NBA draft, especially with the way that the league goes now. You can kind of fit whatever pieces you need to, especially when you're talking about a piece as versatile as Chet Holmgren. But, OKC has a pair of guards that they feel really good about. They have a wing in Lou Dort, who could maybe, I guess, be a part of that long-term core. But, front court is the priority at this point. And I think, any of these three top guys would make sense. But getting Chet Holmgren, whether he goes 1, 2, or 3, this is the guy to me that maybe he's going to struggle the most as a rookie, but 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, I think he unquestionably has the highest upside. He might have the most downside as well, but if you're swinging for the fences, if you want a superstar, I think somebody that's going to help you win the NBA title in like 2028, that guy's Chet Holmgren. So if I'm Houston, I'm thrilled that he's here on the board at number 3.
Okay, Jules, who are you thrilled is on the board at 4? You're picking for Sacramento right now.
Yeah, I'm picking for Sacramento, but I don't know if that will necessarily be the case if the draft does go this way. And honestly, if the draft goes the way that we just had the top 3 go, I don't know if Houston is even staying there and somebody trades up there to get Holmgren. I don't know if Holmgren's the best fit for Houston. Not that he wouldn't go there. Nick made the right pick. It just might not be to Houston, who I think has only worked out Banchero. Like, they're locked in on Paolo Banchero and, could even try and trade up for him if it came down to it. But in this scenario, I think there's one player after those top 3 that stands out in kind of his own tier before we get to the rest of the tiers, and that's Jaden Ivey. So I'm going to select Jaden Ivey from Purdue here, the sophomore. 6'4", we'll call him a combo guard. Really stood out last year at Purdue and was probably held back in the college game by the way that Purdue used him. You saw the speed in the open court at times, the explosive first step to the basket, the improved jump shot from 29% to 40% from 3. Now, the issue here, of course, is that Sacramento used a top 10 pick last year on Davion Mitchell. They did just get rid of Tyrese Halliburton, but they have De'Aaron Fox in that backcourt. So how do they want to, do they want all these guards is what it comes down to. We have the owner coming out saying he wants Keegan Murray. The owner in Sacramento tends to generally get what he wants, but I would be surprised whether it's Sacramento or somewhere else if the best talent left here, who's kind of on an island in between 2 tiers, maybe some people would say, doesn't get selected one way or another. So in some fashion, I think Jaden Ivey does go here. And we know Sacramento isn't afraid to trade. We just saw them go for Sabonis and get rid of a really good prospect in Tyrese Halliburton. So they wouldn't be afraid to add a veteran here for a team that wants Ivey.
Yeah, drawing comparisons to the likes of Steve Francis and Baron Davis. Sacramento,
wow,
never even had him in for a workout.
You just went to 2 late 90s point guards. That was very interesting.
Yeah. That's
I've heard
because
the
of
Morant, Morant comparisons.
His perimeter explosiveness and power. You have to go back that far. Players today, they're weak. They don't have explosiveness and power. You would know that if you watch the NBA at all. Colin,
Okay.
Detroit, who do you want?
With the number 5 pick in the 2002 NBA draft, I will be taking a guy who I think has tremendous upside. And I saw him play out here in the Pac-12 championship this year, and I thought he was a real find, and I think he's going to get better. And that is Benedict Mathurin. I believe that is the actual correct pronunciation is Mathurin.
Just say Mathurin, Colin.
I'm sorry?
Just say Mathurin. Everybody else does.
But that's not the correct way of doing it, Julian.
You have so many issues with me, Emerson.
I did not take 3 years of French in college to waste it when I finally got to my career. So I'm going to go with Benedict Mathurin for Detroit. Look, Detroit's bad. As Nick said, you just need to get the best player in the draft at this level. And I think he's going to be the best guy left on the board. I think Ivey's a bit of a reach at 4, although I certainly think he's going to be a solid NBA player. This is my number 4 guy on the board, and I think he's going to be really, really good for Detroit. Explosive, can shoot the 3. Defensively, I watched him just guys back cut him left and right in the Pac-12 tournament over and over and over again. So yes, in person, defensively, he's going to need to get better, but he will with some coaching in the NBA. But his skill set is really, really high. And again, the ability to just off both feet dunk the basketball in people's faces, and as well as space up and shoot the 3. These are elite skills, and I think he's going to be an elite skill kind of player. A little bit of a project, definitely more of a gamble than some of these guys. Definitely more of a gamble than a guy like Ivey. But if you're Detroit, you got to take some high ceiling, because you know what? You're not getting anybody in free agency. Take a reach, try and develop a player. And I think it'll be a nice combo with Cade Cunningham. It's not like he's going to want to run the point. He's definitely a 2. So I'm going to go with Mathurin.
All right, let's go to 6 overall. Waylon, you will be selecting for Indiana. Who tickles your fancy here?
Shaedon Sharpe. is who tickles my fancy. Maybe the riskiest player in the draft in terms of where he could land upside versus downside. This is a guy who we haven't even seen play competitive basketball in over a calendar year. Kind of a somewhat of a similar trajectory to I'm going to say a name that is a little bit taboo in draft circles, but a little bit similar to the rise of Markelle Fultz, who was not really on the radar all that much early in high school, and then had a meteoric rise late in his high school career. But of course, we saw Markelle Fultz play a year of college basketball. He was great at Washington. We don't have that luxury with Shaedon Sharpe, but the measurables are insane. The athleticism is off the charts. This is a potential superstar. I mean, it's also a guy who could be out of the league in 5 or 6 years. There's a lot of variance here, but it's really rare for a team like Indiana, which hasn't picked this high in like 25 years, to have an opportunity to grab someone like this. So I think they swing for the fences here and go with Shaedon Sharpe.
Alrighty, let's go now back to Jules, Portland. Who do you want, dude, at 7 overall?
Yeah, I mean, the way that the draft is breaking down, we do have a guy here. I think the Portland pick is really interesting, first of all, because they can go so many different ways. They can, number one, trade the pick to try and get some veterans around Damian Lillard. Number two, they can admit that since they're trading guys off like CJ McCollum, they can go younger. And a guy like Shaedon Sharpe, actually, I think would be really good in this spot, but he just went off the board. Or they could take a more polished player to try and go with Lillard and try and build in between. And so with this guy sliding, we'll go with Keegan Murray here from Iowa as the number 7 pick. With this guy sliding, we'll take a little bit more of a polished player here in this scenario. From an odds perspective, he shouldn't be here. If you look at DraftKings Sportsbook, he's heavily juiced to the under 5.5, minus 235. You can get plus 190 on the over 5.5, which I actually think is a pretty decent bet. With Sacramento at 4 being the only landing spot where I think you could lose it. Sophomore year, Keegan Murray, 6'8", 23.5 points, 8.7 rebounds. He shot 55% from the field, almost 40% from 3, 75% from the line. He blocked 2 shots a game. He had over a steal a game. Just a well-rounded, polished player that made a huge leap in his sophomore season and should be relatively NBA ready. If you're looking at the guys above him in this draft, maybe like Banchero on the offensive end is the only more NBA ready guy right now in terms of what we have. So I think this could help a Portland team trying to build around Lillard, try and bounce back.
Yeah, a lot of people consider him plug and play as a rookie, too. Okay, let's go next. Colin, you're on the clock. 8 overall, selecting for New Orleans. Who stands out to you?
I don't love this pick, by the way. I think we hit sort of a wall here. I think it's a good spot, but not a great spot. But I'm going to go with, just because of where the organization is and the talent that they have right now, I'm going to go with Dyson Daniels out of the G League. As we all know, Australian point guards in the NBA always work out and never, ever have any problems when they're picked in the lottery. It's 100% success rate, 0 problems. I can't imagine. I mean, Dante Exum, obviously a 10-time All-Star at this point. Ben Simmons, the happiest player in the NBA. But the thing about Dyson that really impresses me, 5.1 assists per game in just 32 minutes a game in the G League. Rebounds well, 7.4 rebounds per game. He's not a pure scorer, but he's a guy who can make other people better. I think that's going to be sort of his niche and his role in the NBA. I don't like the fact that they already have Jose Alvarado, who I think is going to play himself into being like a rotation player in the league. But having Daniels and Alvarado in the same backcourt, one's going to start, one comes off the bench, and you sort of have one with the second unit, one first unit. Early in that, I think that's going to be Daniels as part of that second unit. If they find a way to keep Zion Williamson, he's a great match because he throws great lobs, he's a good passer, and he can find him. If they don't find a way to keep Williamson, I think he's a guy that people will want to play with because he's sort of got that Lonzo Ball style of, I'm going to make everybody around me better, and I'm a pass-first guy. So for this new, whatever you want to call it, regime, era, whatever they're doing in New Orleans right now, and boy, I hope that franchise finds a way to hang on. Yeah, I think this is going to be the fit. So I'm going with Dyson Daniels. High ceiling, good passer, makes everybody else better.
All right, cool. After 8 comes 9. That's where we find the Spurs. Waylon, you're back on the clock. Talk to me, Goose.
This is the tough spot for San Antonio. I think the Spurs would be thrilled if someone like Ben Mathurin, were to fall to them at 9. Even Dyson Daniels, he could kind of develop alongside DeJounte Murray. I think Keegan Murray feels like just a classic Spurs pick if he's available. But with the way the draft breaks, I think they go for a kind of ultra modern type of player who I think even 5 or 6 years ago, like we're talking about him as a borderline first-round pick, maybe even somebody who wouldn't have entered the draft. But with the way that the league is going, Jeremy Sohan out of Baylor is exactly the type of defensive wing, switchable, huge, big body type of guy who you want in today's NBA. You know, every single successful team, it feels like, has at least one of those guys who's just this defensive stopper. And if you're that good on the defensive end, you're willing to overlook things like a really shaky three-point shot or terrible free throw shooting, which are some things that Sohan has battled. But, watching him, he has like the same body as like a Ben Simmons. Obviously, he doesn't do anything that Simmons does when he's playing basketball, at least on the offensive end. But defensively, he's that kind of player. I mean, he's a legit 6'10", 230, 240, big body type of player who's going to last a long time in the NBA. So, San Antonio has a lot of needs right now. I think it'd be really great to get more of a scorer with this pick. But, you're looking now at a potential lineup next year of, Jakob Poeltl, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell, and DeJounte Murray. I mean, that is a daunting starting five in terms of two-way ability.
All right, round out the top 10 now. Washington, Jules, you're back on the clock. The way this thing has kind of shaken out up to this point, who do you like on the board?
Yeah, I mean, Nick and Colin are kind of scooping up all of these freshmen or one-and-done prospects, whether it be out of the G League, international, or, out of college. So I guess I'm going with my third sophomore in a row here, that being Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin with the number 10 overall pick to the Washington Wizards. Another guy that made a huge jump from his freshman to his sophomore season. He played 10 more minutes per game. Didn't shoot the ball quite as efficiently, but was way more effective when he was on the floor. Almost 20 points a game, over 8 boards, over 2 assists, over a steal a game. A great defender, a great effort guy, a guy that can score but doesn't need to score to be an effective player in the NBA. I will say, with the news of Bradley Beal kind of opting out of that final year and potentially going into free agency and leaving Washington, the Wizards need to get a feel here for what they're going to do. Johnny Davis is more of a plug-and-play guy that can maybe start to help the Wizards get on the right track and get one of those end of the, bottom of the Eastern Conference playoff seeds or play-in round seeds. If they think Beal's going to leave, they might change their draft strategy and be looking at one of these younger guys or these international guys. But for now, I think Johnny Davis is a pretty solid pick towards the back end of the top 10 and a guy that can come in and help Washington on the wing and play alongside Beal.
All right, 11. The Knicks on the clock. Waylon, who stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, with this pick, we're going for upside here. A player who has some kind of injury concerns, dating back to his days as a high school star. We're going AJ Griffin out of Duke. And if he can surmount those injury concerns, I think we're looking at a guy who in a lot of drafts would be maybe even a top 5 pick. I mean, great three-point shooter, 40+% on high volume. As a freshman last year, I mean, he's one of those guys who kind of looks like a football player already, very well developed physically, going to be NBA ready on both ends. A little bit of concern, like I said, kind of stemming back from the injuries, like the movement's not quite as fluid as you'd like, but I think there's some belief that, the further removed he gets from that injury, the better he's going to look long term. So I think if I'm the Knicks here, I'm feeling pretty good about the upside that I'm getting this late in the lottery.
Oklahoma City, Colin, you're next. Who are you selecting here at 12th overall? That's Nick. Come on, Colin, get it together.
Hi, friends. Hello, friends. No, that was me. I put it on mute. I'm a dummy. So I might have the most progressive and forward-thinking general managers in the NBA that I'm building around here in Oklahoma City. And so with the 12th pick, we're going to take the best player out of Santa Clara University since Steve Nash, JALEN Williams. This might be a bit of a reach here, honestly, but I think this is just kind of a fit for what they're trying to do. Williams is 6'6", 209, but he can really fill it up. He needs to get a little bit better as a three-point shooter because I don't think the almost 40% he shot in college will translate as well at the NBA level. But he can score from the mid-range, and he's just what you need in the NBA right now, which is a switchable 3-and-D guy. I think he's got a high upside. I think some people are not looking at him, and look at his stats against the top teams in the West Coast Conference, which are Gonzaga and St. Mary's. Played really well against both those teams. I think against Gonzaga, he got 5 assists and 5.5 rebounds a game. Also, didn't score as efficiently, but that's going to be tough against what was, at one point this season, one of the top 3 defenses in this country. So he can do it against elite talent. I think he's just sort of a guy that's like flying a bit under the radar, and I think I like his upside in the ceiling. So I think they're going to make a reach here, and I think they're going to go with JALEN Williams. Just a guy who can literally play on any NBA roster, because right now Every team's looking for about 6 guys that are 3-and-D wings that can shoot the 3 in the corner. And I think that's what Williams projects as.
Naturally strong with very long arms, Julian. Sounds a lot like you. And now you will be picking for Charlotte at 13.
Julian would never take this pick. It's a reach. He just takes chalk. I mean, have you seen these picks? These picks are so chalky. They should be sponsored by Crayola. Like, this is silly. Come on, Julian.
like
Make
that.
a reach every once in a while.
Come on,
Try and
Jules.
find a player down the board. We're trying
Jules,
to win
live a
NBA
little bit,
championship here.
Jules. You were mashing tuna sandwiches at 9 o'clock this morning. You followed that up with a lamb sandwich. Come on, let's go.
That was a mistake. I meant to get the lamb the first time around. All right. Well, I'll try and mix it up a little bit here. I'm surprised neither of you guys reached on this guy because I think he will be reached on by this point in the draft. So if he slides to whatever we're on, 13.
13, dude.
He's going to go here to Charlotte. That would be Ousmane Dieng. He played for the New Zealand Breakers last year. He's from France. Of course, none of us know too much about him, but you watch a little bit of him. He's a very raw prospect with a lot of high upside, and he's a guy that somebody is going to take a swing on in this lottery. And I would say by 13. I put out on Twitter, I bet him to go under 13.5. It's since moved to 11.5. I bet him at plus money to go in the top 10. I think he has a chance to go 8, 9, 10. Maybe even where I took that chalky Johnny Davis pick now that a guy like Bradley Beal could be out in Washington. He's 6'10", he's got size, he can shoot, he's got athleticism, long arms. Not great on defense, but can obviously learn. The shooting is not all the way where it needs to be, but apparently something that scouts and GMs think that they can fix. I think he's one of these really high upside guys. Now the question is he going to be a guy that flies up the board like, I don't know, a Josh Giddey last year that snuck up to 6 for OKC? Or you have a guy like Alperen Şengün last year that his draft prop got bet all the way down, thought the Spurs were going to go with him in the top 10, and then he goes to the Rockets in, I think, the late teens. There's 2 ways it can go, but the odds and the momentum are certainly building towards him being drafted high because of his skill set. So I think we're going to see him go in the lottery and be gone by 13, but if he goes to 13, the Hornets would probably gladly take him.
All right, Colin, how do you feel about Jules' pick there?
Now we finally get to have a reaction to a pick?
Well, I would actually like to ask him because he was putting a lot of pressure on you. Right now, the reaction this isn't about the reaction because we're going to do that after we take a break.
Looks like he likes it. He's clapping.
I do. I like the fact that, look, this is the NBA draft, man. You got to take highest ceiling possible and reach because especially if you're in a small market, you got no chance of getting a player any other way. So find the guy on the board that you think you can develop into a superstar, and I think that's what the pick Julie just made, I think, is that kind of guy. So that's where I would go.
I agree with Colin's analysis, but I will just say I'm not, if I was making every pick, every team would be a contender every year because I'm fantastic at this. I'm picking who I think the teams are going to pick, which is what helps people win NBA draft props. It doesn't matter who I like or who you like. It matters who these teams like.
Okay.
No, that's true. That is certainly true to an extent. But again, I think the NBA is getting smarter on the whole. I think these front offices are getting smarter. You could go back and, this is speaking of Boston, as you guys sit there, there was an old Boston sports writer who ended up writing for ESPN.com and just sort of shredded every GM every year at the draft. And I think they all started to read that and realize that, hey, there's some smarter ways to do this. The advanced analysis scouting has gotten better. The European scouting has gotten better. And so I think more NBA GMs, especially now that they're all coming from these same front offices, are developing the same way. So we'll see. But I have the next pick on the board.
You're at 14. This is the last one here. You're picking for Cleveland, and you're going with your second straight JALEN.
I am. So this is me covering college basketball for a very long time, and in Memphis's league as well, as I covered South Florida for years. With the 14th and final pick in the NBA lottery, I'm going with JALEN DUREN. Here's the reason. If you can get 12 points and 8 rebounds a game in just 25 minutes, playing for Penny Hardaway in that absolute disaster of a team that is what it is an AAU team on steroids, just playing at the Division I level. What can you do when you get into a real system with real coaching? And by the way, I love Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway, I finished high school in Orlando. Penny Hardaway was one of my favorite players, but he is just not developing these Memphis players the way he should at this level. I think DUREN can get really, really good. You can't teach 6'11", 250 with arms that are, that long and can jump out of the gym. I want to see this guy get in an NBA system and really develop. I think he could become something, especially at the rim, a big-time rim protector in the NBA. I know that's a position that's sort of getting played off the floor a little bit more now. I don't ever think he's going to be a stretch five, but I think he can really still fill a role at the NBA at the highest level. But yeah, you got to get that kid out of Memphis to see what he can really do. It's crazy, but all of these Memphis guys just are not developing the way that they should because of all the chaos that's surrounding that program all the time. I want to see what this kid can do at the next level. Apparently he's had great workouts privately. Give me Jalen Duren, and I think that's it. I think we're done with the first round, or at least the lottery.
Yeah, no, that's it. Here we have the final results of our DraftKings 2022 NBA mock draft. Now we can get some reaction from you guys because Julian's over here crying about it. Nick, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Biggest surprise for you in this mock draft and how everything kind of played out here?
Yeah, like Colin said, it is fairly chalky. I don't think you look at any of the top 5 picks and say this something looks off here. Mathurin going at 5 to Detroit would maybe be a little bit surprising, but not all that surprising. I'll say the pick that was just made, Jalen Duren to Cleveland, I like it. I like the logic. I don't know that Cleveland would make that pick. I as I said earlier in the show, I'm a big proponent of just take the best player available, but you just took a big man in Evan Mobley. You have Jared Allen conceivably locked up for the foreseeable future. That tandem worked really well together when they were both healthy last season. Do you bring another big man in to that mix? Is he just kind of developing to be, is he playing off the bench for the next 2, 3, 4 years? As long as that tandem is there, you can't really play them together. Are you doing some sort of 3-man rotation? That could work. And I like the talent, getting a player of Duren's caliber. I mean, this is a guy who might have been, like, in the old NBA, might have been the number 1 overall pick, like 10 years ago. Getting that kind of talent at 14 is fantastic. But I tell you what, I think the Charlotte Hornets, if the draft plays out like this, they're hoping that Cleveland takes Ochai Agbaji or Malachi Branham, and then they can get Jalen Duren with that next pick at 15.
What looks off to you, Jules? Or go ahead, Colin. You got something to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, Nick is totally right, and I should have actually clarified that. I want this pick because I think Duren does need to develop, and so he's going to need to be behind Mobley. You know what I mean? You can't play them together, 100%. Duren, at best, is a guy who's going to be getting 12 to 14, maybe 18 minutes a game in his rookie season. This is not a Rookie of the Year candidate, but I think this is a guy with a huge upside and a high ceiling. So, but yes, I do agree that you can't go 3 wide. You can't go 3 bigs in the NBA anymore. That just doesn't work. So yeah, but he's definitely he's almost not quite a draft and follow. He's a draft and follow that's going to sit on your bench and maybe get some rotation minutes. But I think his ceiling is just worth it.
All right, Jules, based off what Colin and Nick just said and what you see here on the board, does anything look off to you at all?
I do think Duren to Cleveland would be surprising just because of the positional fit. And I know Colin and I were just talking about drafting just the highest upside, which is fine, but they have already so many young bigs. Mobley, Jared Allen, they have so much size there that it would surprise me. But there could also be a trade involved in there. I think Charlotte, as long as Duren and Mark Williams are both available when Charlotte's picking at 13, that's when they take a swing at a guy like Dieng, who I mocked there, or a wing, because no matter who goes 14, whether it's to Cleveland or a team trades up for a big there, the other one's still going to be available for Charlotte at 15. So that's a little bit of a surprise. I would say the biggest surprise on the board, and that doesn't mean I don't like this prospect, would be Jalen Williams going all the way up to number 12. He's a guy whose draft prop opened up if you go back to, months ago, he was ranked in like the 50s. Draft prop opens in the mid 20s, gets bet down. I gave it out on the Unreasonable Odds podcast at under 18.5 just yesterday on Tuesday, and it's now sitting there at 15.5. It's heavily juiced to the over. You can get some good plus money on the under if Colin is right and he does go in the top 15, and 12, 13, 14 are spots that could make sense. I just think, given the board, which is somewhat chalky, what we have, that would surprise me. It would surprise me, I guess, if Indiana took a shot on such a raw prospect like Shadon Sharpe. I would maybe flip Sharpe and Murray in our mock. Not that that's anything crazy. One guy goes 6, the other goes 7. I just think that order surprises me a little bit. And then Nick saying the surprise with Ben Mathurin going 5, that I guess wouldn't surprise me at all, would be my counter. He's gone from 20-1 to plus 175 to be the 5th overall pick on DK Sportsbook. So somebody knows that Detroit likes Ben Mathurin. I got in there at 7-1. I'm sure Colin probably has some action there because that's getting heavily mocked, and it seems to have a pretty good connection to Ben Mathurin going number 5 there to Detroit. And if he doesn't, I think he's a slam dunk at 6 to Indy.
Colin, which guy did you 3 sleep on?
I hang on. Can you put the board back because I can't even see it right now?
Yeah, you don't have it in front of you, but here we go.
So I think Jaden Ivey's a reach at 4. I do. I just don't think he goes that high. I know everybody's saying he's the 4th best player on the board, but I think that there are just some size limitations there, and I think some NBA teams will be scared off by not only how Purdue finished the season, but the fact that he was just unable to find a way for his team in a game against the St. Peter's Peacocks that, like, really, honestly, he should have taken over. Some of that's coaching, some of that's got to go on Matt Painter, but also Ivey he didn't do it in big spots this year in the tournament. I think that's going to turn some people off. So, again, a great scorer, seems like a great kid, high character kid, but at 4, I just think it's a reach. I just don't think the talent is there. I'm rooting for him. I hope I'm wrong, but I think he's going to fall down the board tonight. I think he's going to be the guy sitting there twiddling his thumbs and having the awkward camera shots during the draft.
Nick, did Colin or Jules, any of their picks, you feel like just all three of you in general are sleeping on anyone here?
Well, I mean, based on getting Chet Holmgren at 3, I think, OKC, I guess, would be sleeping on Holmgren, taking Banchero at that pick. I would definitely take Holmgren there. But, that 3 in some order, I think has kind of been the expectation for so long that you can't be shocked. If it goes Smith, Banchero, Holmgren, Smith, Banchero, whatever order. I wouldn't say that's a massive sleeper. You could make the argument maybe for Keegan Murray. A lot of mocks, you'll see him a little bit higher. I think that could be in play for Indiana at 6, could maybe be in play even for Detroit at 5. The Sacramento pick is just such a wild card. Like, of course, it's the Kings that have the 4th pick in what we consider like a 3-player draft. And it's just going to be chaotic. I mean, I have no idea what Sacramento is going to do. I could very much see them taking Jaden Ivey. I could see them taking virtually any player that we have coming off the board in like the 4 through 9 range. But to be honest, I don't see any like major mistakes here. I think we got it. I think we at least laid out pretty compelling cases for why the draft could play out like this.
Jules, if you like Holmgren to slip a little bit here, would you bet, let's see, plus 300, you got Banchero to go in the 2 spot, and then Holmgren plus 550 to go 3. So is it worth making those bets?
So the top 3 is the top 3, and we just don't know the order because we're not getting that information, unfortunately. So I wish I could give you something more concrete as to what I guess we'll make the question, what is the best bet outside of the number 1 pick? Like, if you had to bet on 2 or 3, I guess whichever one is the biggest plus money. So that sounded like Holmgren to go 3, right? I don't like the match with Houston, but if Smith and Banchero are off the board and Houston is selecting, it wouldn't surprise me to see them move the pick to somebody that wants Holmgren. So I guess in theory, taking that, what is it, plus 600 for Chet to go 3, I would take that before betting Banchero to go 2nd, only because the odds are better and there is some type of scenario where I could see that happening. But let me repackage this into a question for Colin, I guess, because this is such a pivotal piece of the draft that's going to dictate such a trickle-down effect and all the information after. If Jaden Ivey isn't going 4, I put him there because he's the best player. I'm not attached to him going 4, obviously, and the odds have slowly moved away from that happening, even though he's still a heavy favorite. What do you think happens at 4, Colin?
Oh, man. See, that's where I think it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
I think you got to go with a reach guy there. I just don't think there's anybody in this draft where you have to have them at 4. You have to have them as a lock. I agree. It's 1, 2, 3 in some order. I've obviously have Banchero first on my board. I would have Holmgren 2nd, and I'd have Jabari Smith 3rd, which I believe is like the inverse of what you're doing there. But I don't know. I guess you know what? If he doesn't go there, and you're going really far down the board, there's almost no scenario according to the odds where Shadon Sharp would go 4th.
Right.
But maybe, you know what I mean?
Sharp was the name I was going to use.
It's the Kings.
Who are you going with?
Sharp was the name that I would use there, I guess, as the long shot.
I guess. Yeah, I like it at 100 to 1. I think there's value at 100 to 1 that this could happen, that he could go 4th. Certainly a ceiling there, huge. I don't know. It just doesn't feel. Again, I don't know. It's a great bet. I think he could roll down the board, and I think there's a chance. But then Sharp at 100-1 doesn't really seem to fit either. So I'm not sure here. You know, maybe you take Mathurin at you know, a flyer on him at 4 would not surprise me either. Maybe that's even more value at 200-1 than Sharp would be at 100-1.
Nick, Holmgren plus 600 to go 3rd overall. Is that something you'd be interested in?
I don't love it. I mean, I think Julian's right that, you know, if you're making that bet, you're just hoping that some team trades up, you know, after Holmgren slips past 2. But I just don't see that happening. I think, I mean, he's minus 220 to go 2nd overall for a reason. And I still think there's a chance, you know, like Julian said earlier in the show, that Orlando surprises us and just takes Chet Holmgren number 1. I mean, he has better odds to go number 1 by a mile than he does to go number 3. So, you know, to me, yeah, I just don't see a lot of value there. I'd be really surprised unless OKC really reverses course, you know, in the next 24 hours here. I'll just be really surprised if Holmgren makes it past the Thunder at number 2.
Well, Colin, seeing how like our whole mock fell here, I know Nick and the Spurs took Sohan 9th, and he's plus 150 to go in the top 10. Do you feel like that was a reach at all?
No, I don't think that's a reach. Look, there's going to, you know, 4 is kind of a lot, but I think 5 for 12 can kind of just sort of go any way here. It's just sort of who do you like. I do want to follow up on Nick's point, though, about Holmgren going number 1. So keep in mind, the Orlando Magic's GM is John Hammond. John Hammond is 67 years old. John Hammond has been around basketball since the dawn of like the leather, since they took the laces out of the ball. Okay. This is an old school guy who's going to look at 7-4 and the ability to shoot the 3 and go, how can I pass on that? This is Odin versus Duran all over again. This is, do you take the big guy with the ceiling and just sort of go, you can't teach that, figuring that he's going to project well. And remember, I mean, and Holmgren is a young freshman. He is only 18. I mean, he's a young 18 too. So 18, I'm sorry, is that right? 18? Nick, you shook your head there. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think he's a little older, actually.
I think Holmgren's 20.
Yeah.
It's
just,
Jabari Smith is
he's
19.
The oldest of the 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You know what? I got my, this is what you get for being on air. But yeah, I think they're going to go with the 7-4 guy. I think they're going to go tall and big and just sort of, this is an old school team that's trying to do it the old school way. They're going to try and build around him, you know, and it's Orlando. They're going to screw it up. So they're going to take the kid in. He's probably going to break his foot. It's going to be a horror show. So, yeah.
All right, Jules, which other spots in like a player's draft position do you like? Because going back to our mock draft, like you took Keegan Murray 7th to go to Portland. So his over-under there's 5.5, and that's plus 190 for the over, I believe. Same with Dyson Daniels, who we picked 8th. His line's at 7.5 as well, plus 160 to go to the over. So another player's draft position you like.
Yeah, so if we're going through here, you know, Keegan Murray, I think, is a little heavily favored to go in the top 5, and you can get that plus 190 on over 5.5. I don't think he's everything the Pistons say is that they want an athletic wing to go alongside Cunningham, a guy that plays off the ball. So that's like everyone there except for Keegan Murray. And he's not going in the top 3. So that only leaves 4 to the Kings or somebody trading in for Murray to take. But somebody trading up to take Murray over Ivy doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So it's really just the Kings. And the terrifying part here is that the Kings owner seems to like Keegan Murray. And the Kings will do crazy things all the time. So you're basically betting plus 190 on the Kings, in my opinion, to not take him. And with Ivy on the board there and the pickup for trade, I just think I could see that happening. You go through the rest of the board. There's some guys on here that are still decent enough value to bet. Let me see. Dyson Daniels is a guy that I wouldn't bet on at this point. Ben Mathurin, we kind of missed the boat on the under 6.5. It's all the way down to minus 250. Here's the guy that here's one that makes sense because none of us had him going in the lottery here. If you look at Malachi Branham out of Ohio State, a freshman that came on super late as a good scorer, his prop is up to 14.5. He's minus 135 to the over. I actually put this one out on Twitter this morning, playing the over 14.5 on Malachi Branham. I don't see a spot for him in the lottery, especially when we have a guy like JALEN DUREN sliding. His prop's at 10.5. Could he go 9 to San Antonio? Yes, but I would play the over 10.5 there. I think that's still one that has a little bit of value. So again, looking at the board, it's tough to find ones that, haven't been just already bet down to an unbettable spot a day ahead of the draft. But I would say those two, in terms of lottery guys and what we just put on the board, both of them would hit in this mock. Those are two that I think are still at a reasonable price and playable.
Nick, is there a player's draft position right now that you believe is still bettable at this point?
Yeah, I mean, Julian did a pretty good job of kind of giving the overview. A lot of these numbers have kind of stabilized, with the draft, a little over 24 hours away. But, AJ Griffin under 10.5, you can get that at plus 210. We had him going 11 in our mock, so, you're only asking for one more spot up there. All it takes is one team to want to take a chance on AJ Griffin. I don't know that it happens, but at that kind of money, I don't think that's a bad bet. One thing I think that's really interesting, and there's not a ton of value here, but if you look at the numbers on Johnny Davis, he is minus 260 to go over 9.5, but he's also minus 200 to go in the top 10. So essentially the odds imply that Johnny Davis is going with the exact 10th pick to the Washington Wizards. So that's something that'll be kind of interesting to monitor as these numbers continue to shift over the next few days. The other one I'll throw out there is Ousmane Dieng. You could get him to go top 10 at plus 125. His number for individual pick is 11.5, and you could go under 11.5 at minus 125. So obviously that buys you one more spot, pick number 11. But I think I'd rather take the plus money and just bet that, like Julian made a good comparison earlier in the show, that maybe he's this year's Josh Giddey, where it feels like over the final 48 hours before the draft, he jumps like 7 picks.
Hey, Colin, which player's draft position are you most confident betting right now?
Oh boy, I think you just got to stay away from the top three completely. Because I think all of these franchises can surprise, and almost what I would want to do. I think we could have like an Anthony Bennett situation where the whole room just goes at number 4 when Sacramento picks, and they just reach for somebody that has no business being there. I almost want to take the 4th pick and just sort of like fade Murray, fade Ivy, and just go down the board with whomever it might be. Daniel Sharp, Mathurin, whoever you want to go with. I would just sort of paper the board at 4 and take all the dogs, because you just seem to know that, Vivek Ranadive is going to do something crazy here. It just feels, it feels like Cleveland taking Anthony Bennett all over again. I don't know. So I would paper the board at 4. But 1, 2, 3, the easiest choice in this draft is the 3rd pick. You can't screw it up. There's literally no way to screw up the 3rd pick. And then does somebody reach out? Does Sacramento make some sort of, trade? And then whoever fills in there would probably want Ivy. But if they don't trade it, I think you got a chance if you go down the board here. So we'll see.
All right.
Crazy.
Jules, real quick, we got the Cavs and Knicks are 2 teams on DK Sportsbook. You can bet on their first pick. So Jalen Duren for Cleveland plus 2,000 there, and AJ Griffin is plus 400 to go to New York. So is it worth a shot on Duren to close out the lottery, or are you looking at someone else for these 2 teams?
Yeah, personally, I don't think he goes 14. If I was betting the 14th pick exactly, I would probably look at some of these wings. So like Agbaji is plus 350. Jalen Williams is plus 600. I think both of those guys are in spots at 14 where I could see them going. Where the heck is the Knicks? The Knicks might even be off the board right now. But if it comes back on the board,
they're off the board.
If it comes back on the board, they could be a team that tries to trade up for Jaden Ivey, in my opinion. Who else is connected to the Knicks? The Knicks are going to do something crazy. I put it this way. I'm not going to bet A.J. Griffin to the Knicks. I think A.J. Griffin at 11 is one of the most heavily mocked picks that won't happen.
All right.
If that makes sense.
Colin, less than a minute to go in the show. Anything to add to that?
Which Chinese have signed with CAA? Because if you tell me that, I can probably tell you who the Knicks are going to take. It's crazy. I think this draft is wide open. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And trying to book this as we did, everybody stays in their slot. I'll take an over on 2.5 trades before we get to the end of the first round for sure. So I think there's going to be some movement here. It just makes too much sense for some of these teams to move some things around and to move some money around, especially these teams that are picking high in the drafting and also take in a lot of cap room, because they all have a ton of cap room right now. So you might see some like massive trade exceptions getting moved around with these picks today. So I think, we stuck to the teams 1 through 14. I think there's going to be a lot of movement tonight.
All right, you expect the same, Waylon? Real quick, couple seconds.
Yeah, hopefully. It's always more fun when we get more movement. But, just to wrap on the Knicks, Jalen Duren 25-1 to go to the Knicks. I almost like that better than AJ Griffin. I think there's a route where that happens. And then for the Cavs, Malachi Branham plus 450 or Ochai Agbaji plus 350. Agbaji especially could contribute right away for a team that's looking to win.
All right, boys. Appreciate it. Nice work. We'll see how it all plays out tomorrow night with the 2022 NBA Draft. Let's see, we got the slate coming up, 5 o'clock tonight. I'll be talking some golf with Jeff, also some NHL because we got game 4 of the finals tonight. And then we're back here in studio tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time for a Thirsty Thursday edition of The Sweat. Jared Carabas will be joining us in studio. So we will see all you guys and gals then. Thanks for hanging out with us.